of Hugo Chavez of Venezuela obviously being talked about here at IHS CERAWeek in Houston. Joining me now is the chief economist of API, John Felmy. John, good to see you here in Houston.
Thanks for having me.
There's a lot we don't know in terms of implications for the oil market, but when you heard the news, what were your thoughts about how the energy markets might be impacted?
Well, first, it's really too soon to tell because we don't know what they're going to actually be doing. And the key thing to remember, though, is that Venezuela has been in a long slide. Failure to invest, spending all their money on social programs, and so it's been a declining potential source of supply.
How many American companies do business with Venezuela? Do you know?
There's only a handful.
Yeah.
You've had expropriations of a couple major companies, and so it really put into place a concern about why would you invest there, if you're just going to be expropriated.
Although Rosneft and other foreign players do indeed have investments in Venezuela.
That's correct, and there's also some U.S. companies, but when you had actions in the past, you really have to think twice about going there.
While we don't know the leadership of Venezuela, and there are presumptions being made, but again, we don't know if policies will change, dynamics of leadership will change. Is there anything that would change within OPEC, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, generally their policies are going to be consistent because they want to try to maintain the OPEC cartel, and whoever's in charge is going to want to be consistent with that.
Right, and they're going to want to remain part of OPEC in terms of leverage.
Well, you would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, because they are still a large producer. They've been declining, but it really does, set up a situation where we'll have to see that hopefully things will improve.
One of the big themes here has been U.S. energy independence, obviously. It's been a big story of the past year. What does Venezuela and the death of Chavez tell us about energy independence and why we should be thinking about more in this country, that issue?
Well, it should reinforce that we need to look after our own energy security. Because of the resources that we have in the United States and imports from Canada and biofuels, we can become energy independent from a North American basis. And that's really important in terms of our energy security.
And I know the API are big proponents of Keystone Pipeline, so that bolsters the argument for it in your view? Absolutely,
because both Venezuelan and Mexican heavy crude production is declining, and so you're going to need to replace that, and so bringing in the oil sands from Canada can do that.
What did you think of the environmental study? I mean, are you more confident that approval's on the way for Keystone?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we're entering now a 45-day comment period. Clearly the study said that this is not an issue. And so the key thing is we need to develop the pipeline for jobs, for energy security, and that would help in terms of revenue.
Back to Venezuela just for a moment. In terms of Venezuela trying to make up its loss of exports to certain countries, say the U.S., can it do that? Or is it in permanent decline?
It's not in permanent decline. They have a vast amount of resources that they could develop, but they're going to have to spend money to do it, or they're going to have to change the rule of law so that companies come in from outside. For a lot of the time of the president's tenure, they talked about exporting to China. So the question is, what are they going to do going forward?
Will it potentially create opportunities for American companies, though, say, for them to move into China?
Well, there's always a possibility. The key when you're dealing with China, of course, is intellectual property. And so how do you assure that you don't lose that when you operate there?
So in terms of the power players in the global energy market, where would you rank Venezuela? Where would you rank the U.S.? Where would you rank Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think if you look at all those three, they're clearly in the top 10. The United States is moving more where they're going to be the largest producer of oil, and so that's going to put them in significant position. You've also got Saudi Arabia is very important in terms of large production, and Russia.
John Felmy of API, good to get an update from you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Rhonda Schaffler. This is Reuters.